Namaste. Welcome to the Advaita Channel. I'm Bhagavati, and today I'm going to read something a little different from my usual schedule. I've chosen, due to the Christmas period, to read from Adyashanti, Resurrecting Jesus. It's a very beautiful book, and here it is. And he shares the journey of Christ the mystic, and I feel on this day when we celebrate his birth that it's a good story to share, and we can look at how this story affects us all and how we can carry Christ's spirit in our heart. First, I'd like to play something from Muji.
Beloved Father, who dwells within the soul of my being, whose name is I Am. Veneration to your holy name. Thy kingdom is here. Thy will prevails throughout the earth as it does in the heavenly realms of my soul. You open your hands and satisfy the hunger of all living beings. You heal all hearts of sorrow, so that they in turn may show forgiveness to those whose minds are shrouded in ignorance of the self. Beloved Mother, who imparts to all the sense of choice, so we may finally come to choose you who are truth, and thus find everlasting freedom. Glory to your name, O truth. For yours is the kingdom of existence, of peace and love. All power and glory emanates from you alone, who imparts to all the wisdom, light, love and courage to refer to themselves as I am. Amen. Om.
Namaste Adam, Namaste Nitya. Thank you for joining me. Thank you to all those that I know are joining outside Ustream today, and to those who will watch later on video. Merry Christmas. So today I've chosen to read this book because for me it represents the connection between ourselves and Christ and his presence in the world as an awakened being. So I'll start with a couple of extracts from the beginning and then go into the chapters. And I'm going to dip into this book a few times during the next 7 days, during the Christmas period. There'll be a second reading this evening. The Jesus story is a mirror that helps us to see ourselves more clearly. The primary function of mythic storytelling is to render life transparent to the underlying transcendence that shines through it. This is the power of storytelling. Storytelling invites us into a creative relationship with the story. We can't just be onlookers at a distance. We must throw ourselves into the story so that we can start to become the characters. We must allow ourselves to see life with the eyes of Jesus, with the eyes of Christ, to see the world through the eyes of the disciples, through the eyes of those who were healed and made whole and redeemed by the Christ presence. Each of us will have our unique way of looking at the Jesus story. What I want to bring forth is one particular view that I think is very powerful and potent and relevant for our time. But as we enter together into the story, I also want to invite you into your own creative relationship with the story itself. Keep your ears open as to how each part of the story is speaking uniquely to you. When we listen in this way, this 2,000-year-old mythic journey of Jesus becomes our own journey into ourselves. Into the revelation of God within us, into the realization of who and what we really and truly are. So this is a journey we can all share. So we start with Adyashanti's connection to Jesus, and we all maybe today can reflect on what our own connection to Jesus is. My own was being brought up as a Catholic Christian, the Catholic schooling, which I then totally rejected at age 19. I didn't care to be preached to. And I swapped it out with Zen Buddhism, and I remained with that until I came to my present master, Muji, just over 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. I have no religion. So Adyashanti's connection to Jesus. We begin with a quote from Saint Teresa of Lisieux. I can nourish myself. I can nourish myself on nothing but truth. So how does a spiritual teacher with a Zen Buddhist background get interested in the Jesus story? Well, from the time I can remember, I was fascinated with the Jesus story. As a kid, I watched the Ten Commandments and all the other spiritual epics that were on TV and in the movies at that time. When I was young, we had sliding glass doors on our bathtub, and I'd sit in the bath and doodle crosses with circles around them in the steam on the glass. Any time I had a piece of paper, I would doodle cross signs with big circles around them I didn't even think about it as a Christian symbol, and I didn't consciously connect it to the Jesus story. But my notebooks from the time I was in grade school all the way through college are filled with crosses. When I look back on that, I think that the whole story of Jesus and the image and symbol of the cross was lodged in a deep place in my unconscious. There was something really deep within me that was profoundly interested in this character. Now, I didn't grow up in a particularly religious family, and I wasn't really interested in organized religion. When I was young, maybe 8 or 9, my parents decided to take us kids to church for a while. Of course, I was put into Sunday school, and my parents went off to what I called the big room to listen to the preacher. After 2 or 3 Sunday school experiences, I told my parents I didn't want to go anymore. The Sunday school teacher had us colouring pictures of Jesus in a book and singing songs. And I was more interested in what was happening in the big room, where the preacher and all the adults were. After a few weeks, we stopped going, and that was that. While my family wasn't particularly religious in the conventional sense, there was a lot of religious and spiritual conversation that went on in the family, among my parents and my grandparents. I had 2 sets of grandparents that lived very close to me, as well as aunts and uncles and cousins, and we would all get together quite often. It wasn't unusual for the conversation to turn to various religious and spiritual subjects. Both sets of grandparents were churchgoers, and one of my grandfathers was what I would call a real Christian. He embodied the Christian spirit of generosity and love in a way that I have rarely seen since. His friends called him the deacon, because he spent so much time serving as a deacon in his church. These conversations had a deep influence on me. I just found them so mysterious and so engaging. These talks about God and Spirit and Jesus. And as a child, I would just sit there and listen with a kind of awe. I didn't understand it at all, but it engendered me with a deep feeling of the mystery of life, of a transcendent presence that I could sense. Fortunately, the discussion was always very open and expansive, not dogmatic. Nobody was trying to argue their point. It was more a kind of inquiry, of really looking deeply at these things. From the time I was very young, I would have various types of what I would now call spiritual experiences. And when I heard talk of religion or spirituality, I made a connection between those experiences and some of the subjects the adults were discussing. So as I said, even though we weren't a religious family, religion and spirituality were part of life from as far back as I can remember. I was also, always a lover of Christmas. Now I suppose any kid is a lover of Christmas, with all the presents, the tree, the lights, and those holiday TV specials made for kids. I loved all that stuff too. But for me, Christmas was also a sacred time. Each year, starting in October, I would be overcome by a certain kind of presence. A transcendent, beautiful, rich, intimate presence. I associated it with the Jesus story, which is, of course, what Christmas is really all about. This feeling of the sacred would overcome me for several months before Christmas. The closer I got to Christmas, the more this sense of the sacred would overtake me. It carried a sense of great meaning and profound intimacy. I was literally living in a state of grace for 2 or 3 months every year, and this added a sacred dimension to the whole Christmas celebration that went far beyond the packages and the lights and the glitter of Christmas. And so, Christmas and the Christian message have always resonated with me on a deep level. The Jesus story has always been significant to me. As I got older, sometime in my teens, I partook in communion at Catholic Mass. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to take communion if you weren't confirmed into the church. Looking back, I'm glad that I didn't know I wasn't supposed to be doing that, because I did it innocently. And as I went through the ritual of taking communion and drinking the wine, I found this silent ritual to be extraordinarily profound. I didn't expect it to happen. I had gone to Mass with another family, and I just participated to see what it was like. It also served to connect me, again, with the Jesus story. And the next section is called Falling in Love with Saint Teresa. As I got into my late teens, I really started to get interested in a deeper form of spirituality. I wasn't thinking of Christianity at the time. I started to read some spiritual books. And in a book about Zen Buddhism, I came across the word enlightenment. When I read the word enlightenment, I had a huge response to it. One that really changed my life's orientation. I just had to know the meaning of that word. I suppose you could say that was the moment I became a spiritual seeker. I was searching for the enlightenment I had read about in that Zen book. I found a Zen teacher in a directory, one who happened to actually only be 15 minutes from where I grew up, which was amazing, because at the time there were very few Zen centers or temples in the United States. Her name was Advaita Channel, and she had gone through training with her own teachers for a long time.